Good morning, everyone. Welcome to DevPulseCon 2020, our first virtual conference. We are honored to host attendees from around the world this year. So I would like to personally welcome those of you who do not speak English as your primary language. So here goes. Please forgive me if I mispronounce things. Namaste, India. Assalamu alaikum to the Middle East, India, Singapore, and Malaysia. Welkom, Netherlands. Shalom, Israel. Hallo na karibu, Africa. Herzlich willkommen, Germany. Ni hao, China. Hola y buenos dias, Mexico. And welcome to the United Kingdom, Australia, and New Zealand. And last but not the least, to my fellow North Americans from the USA and Canada, a very hearty and warm welcome. This is a very strange year, as you all know. We had to postpone our conference from the usual April timeline to October due to COVID. It has given us the time and the resources to bring together a fantastic lineup of keynote speakers, workshops on technical and product management topics, as well as panels on being the sole income earner and finding a path from engineering to product management. And to keep everyone from burning out from all the Zoom sessions and online meetings, we have streamlined 2-hour morning and afternoon sessions. All timings for our sessions for DevPulseCon are Pacific time. I wanted to take this opportunity to mention ThriveWise programs we provide to companies as separate standalone programs. We have our innovative Ally training for engineers and PMs, as well as our groundbreaking Safe Space program, which we are currently piloting at a prestigious Silicon Valley tech company in 2020 and 2021. Both of these new programs are in line with our mission to help improve workplace environments so that technical women can thrive in the workplace. So please do take a look at our programs on our website, thrive-wise.org. That is thrive-wise.org. And once again, welcome to DevPulseCon.
Well, I'm Sheila Rohra, and I'm really honored to be part of this conference with a group of highly talented and professional women and men. And I'm excited to be here to share my journey of change. But before we start, you're probably wondering, what is Netapp? So you're probably very likely using Netapp Technology and you don't even know it when you're downloading songs, like my favorite are songs from the 80s, or checking on stock prices, or watching a movie like Shrek or How to Train Your Dragon, or even when you're managing your bank accounts and investments. So a little bit about me professionally. I'm currently the Senior Vice President of Worldwide Services and Support, leading over a $2 billion business that provides strategic services and customer support to some of our largest companies in the world. So my team essentially owns the customer experience. And prior to my current role, I held 2 other positions at Netapp, Chief of Staff to Netapp CEO and the Chief Transformation Officer. So as a former Chief Transformation Officer, I drove change throughout the company by leading growth initiatives and productivity improvements to significantly positively impact revenue and spending discipline. And as Chief of Staff, I handled the day-to-day operations on behalf of the CEO so that he could focus on the longer-term strategy and vision for the company. But what I'm most proud of is my work around diversity, inclusion, and belonging. I am now a proud global executive sponsor of Latinos Unidos at Netapp, LUNA, And I was also formerly the global executive sponsor, excuse me, of Netapp's Women in Technology. So you're going to hear a lot from me today around transformation and change. And if there's anything I would like you to take away from my talk, I want you to remember 3 key takeaways. Stop, change, and invest. I call these 3 actions the transformation mantra. And I'll share how I've applied these both from my personal and professional perspectives. And I hope you might learn how to put them into practice in your own professional, personal lives too. So change has been a constant thread throughout the decades of my personal growth. So I'm going to walk you through decade by decade. And I was realizing as I was putting this together, I didn't realize how many decades I've been through. So I appreciate no counting. So in the 60s, that's actually where it all begins. I was born in the late 60s as Sheila Devendra Patel in Pennsylvania. I was the first US born member of my entire family. My father was a civil engineer and my mother was a psychologist. So you can imagine the interesting childhood that I've had. And like many immigrants, my parents faced big changes with the move to the US and also language barrier and some discrimination. My mother had to stop working, which forced my parents to make expense trade-offs to invest in raising me and save for my education. The 70s was all about fitting in and discovering my passion. So I started attending school, and I was the only student of Indian descent in the entire school. And plus, I was very shy. I would hardly talk. My friends today wouldn't actually believe that, but it is true. I hardly talked back then. And as you can imagine, we were faced with struggles around discrimination. My first few weeks in kindergarten was a horrible experience. I was being picked on. And in order to avoid conflicts, my teacher placed me on a table all by myself so that the other students wouldn't get in trouble. She would even get angry at me, even if I tried to engage with other students. And this was all because I was different. So obviously my parents couldn't tolerate how I was being treated, but they were just too scared to stand up to the teacher. So they decided to move our home. I now was going to a new school. I had a new teacher who approached me with kindness and encouraged me to play with other kids. She even helped me explain to the classroom where my family was from and to educate them on India. Kids asked me if I lived in a teepee because they thought I was a Native American. So my mother forced me to present to the class about India so that I stopped my shyness, changed my classmates' knowledge of Indians in order for me to grow and strengthen my confidence. I was the first non-white recipient of the school's most honorable award called the Citizenship Award. I also discovered a love of science and math. And my parents bought me for Christmas my very first computer, an IBM PC Junior. I quickly learned to program in BASIC on my own. And my very first project was for my mother. See, she had these pages and pages of these handwritten phone numbers and contact names. So I decided to create a search app before an app was a popular thing for my mom, which made it much easier for her to find the phone numbers when she needed it. The 80s, the teen years. Now, remember, my parents migrated to the US in the 60s. India progressed, but my parents were mentally trapped in the 60s. My mother was chaperoned if I attended any event that included boys. I wasn't even allowed to wear shorts and ended up wearing sweatpants during gym class, even if the temperature was over 100 degrees. And also, my parents decided that I am to be a doctor, but I wasn't too happy about that because I wasn't passionate about it. I had to really look inside myself because I just wasn't happy. I had to stop sacrificing my happiness for my parents. Nobody wins here. So I had a heart-to-heart conversation about changing my major to electrical engineer. in order to invest in a career that I'm absolutely passionate about. Obviously, initially they weren't too happy, but then they warmed up to it and was very supportive because they love me. And my parents proudly sat in the first row as I graduated with honors in EE. The 90s was about being on my own. So I decided to move to Sydney, Australia to pursue my MBA. Now, again, remember, my parents are mentally living in the 60s in India. So how can we send our unmarried daughter to another country? What are people going to say? Well, they eventually got over it. They trusted in me. So I started to look for a job as an electrical engineer, and it was going to be easy. After all, I graduated with honors. I applied to over 50 companies, and I didn't land a single interview. Companies were just not that open to hiring a female engineer yet. I was still determined to get my foot through the door of a high-tech company, and I finally landed a job at Osborne Computers, working on a production assembly line, putting together PCs. It was a very humbling experience for me. So 6 months later, in a few hundred assembly of PCs, the CEO of the company wanted to talk to me. Boy, I actually thought I was in trouble. I thought maybe one of the PCs I built blew up at a customer site or something. In fact, he said, "You're an electrical engineer, so you must be smart. How would you like to lead the certification of ISO 9000 for quality assurance?" And apparently this was actually required in order to land some of the government related deals. So without any hesitation, I accepted the role. I had no idea what ISO anything was, but I took a risk. I stopped being in my comfort zone. I changed my job, and I invested time to learn everything there was to know about ISO 9000 that weekend. And I certified the company in 4 months, which was 2 months ahead of schedule, and then became the head of quality assurance for the company. That experience was humbling. And at the same time, it built confidence for me to take risk. So after 3 years living in Australia, I decided to pack my bags and move to Silicon Valley. 2000s, lots of big changes for me. I worked for Cisco for that entire decade, and I was responsible for the supply chain management and new product introduction for a high-speed switching product that had to grow from $0 to $1 billion in less than 2 years. So obviously I faced lots of obstacles, and it was forcing me to think out of the box. And one of the examples I remembered was one of the high-speed switching product had a 26-layer printed circuit board. And I apologize for geeking out here for a minute, but this is actually important. And this 26-layer printed circuit board had 2 manufacturing houses that built it worldwide, which then makes it impossible to scale. So we had to essentially cut the board into 2. One was a main board and one was a daughter board, which resulted in significantly less layers. Now, over 20 manufacturing houses can actually build that circuit board. So see, we had to stop designing complex boards in this example, change the design in order to grow and scale the product. And this particular product captured more than 80% of the market share in no time. During this decade, I also got married. Parents are happy because I married a doctor. I now became Sheila Rohra and became a mother of 3 kids, which are all 1 year apart. Yep, they're all back to back. They're 12 months apart each. And obviously, this introduced challenges with balancing a career and a family. So I had to stop doing everything by myself because I was failing. I was failing at everything. I was failing at being a good mom. I was failing at doing good at work. So I brought my parents over and I had them move to California to help me, which was a big change with hard trade-offs. But I learned to let go of things that were not that important and not micromanage my parents and drive them crazy so that I can invest in raising kids in a nurturing environment while growing my career. 2010. This is actually where the Netapp decade begins with me. George Kurian, who is now CEO of Netapp, back then was the head of product operations, and he asked me to join him as his chief of staff. Also, he thinks that being a mother is a great skill set, as we're obviously highly organized and outstanding multitask masters. He said I was perfect for the job, half jokingly. And one of the first things he asked me to do was to take down capital expenses for engineering by 40%. So we successfully achieved about $60 million within a year. And we did this by stopping engineers from having dedicated test equipments and test beds. We changed the shared test model so that engineers were able to share the test beds in order to invest in innovative products. Fast forward, 2015, George Kurian was appointed CEO when Netapp was not doing that well. So he formally declared that it's time for the transformation of the company. I was thinking, wow, what a great opportunity. So I asked if I could lead this company-wide effort. And his response was no, and said that I wasn't qualified. I was feeling disappointed, upset, as I thought I had all the right qualifications and skills. Then I realized I was just feeling sorry for myself and entitled, and I wasn't giving him the benefit of the doubt. So I changed my approach by being more confident and convincing him by providing with clear examples of my experiences, which resulted me in getting the role as Netapp's first Chief Transformation Officer. And this led to a fantastic career growth and an opportunity to speak to over 400 MBA students at Stanford University about transformation. Stop, change, invest is actually what made Netapp's transformation a huge success. And I want to quickly explain this case study of a major transformation effort that I led for the company a few years ago. So I want you to consider the macro environment several years ago. There was nearly $2 billion taken out of the economy. $2 billion, it's huge. And IT spending as a result was declining significantly. IT was moving data to the cloud and buying more flash drives, while Netapp was primarily selling spinning disks and had no rank in flash and was not in the cloud arena. Profits were at all-time low, and in some quarters we were spending more than we were making. So we had an opportunity to change and go after these new markets and be more efficient in the way we work. So we conducted a top-down assessment across the company for every business function. And we uncovered work that was not valuable to the company. We were not focused nor wise in our investments. So what do? We stopped spending R&D money on overlapping products that competed with one another. We stopped approving everyone's favorite business applications. I can't begin to tell you how many chat applications we had at that time. We stopped building data centers in Sunnyvale, California, because it's just way too expensive and just not efficient. We stopped allowing so much travel for internal meetings and took advantage of technology like Zoom. And we also had to stop working in silos. So after we stopped several things, we shifted our focus to change. We changed our site strategy to acquire the best talent globally. We changed the way we test products and implemented more automation. We changed our data center management by leveraging the cloud. We changed our manual reporting to be more automated. We changed level 1 support by using machine learning and predictive analytics, just to name a few. So the work we stopped and the changes we implemented allowed us to take advantage of the last and third step, invest. That's my favorite. So what do we invest in? We invested in Flash and cloud, which included R&D, marketing, sales, training. We invested in talent. We gave retention bonuses, hired expertise in cloud and Flash. We invested in new and cutting-edge productive tools like IBM Watson, Zoom, demand generation, analytics. We invested in customer events to attract new buyers. We invested in partnerships with the 3 biggest hyperscalers, AWS, Azure, and GCP. All of this resulted in Netapp being one of the top companies for Flash and a significant player in the cloud technology. So in just 3 years, our operating margins went from a single digit to over 20%, and the numbers say it all. This was an amazing turnaround for Netapp and absolutely an amazing experience for me. I often look to others for inspiration. So one of my favorite leaders is Dorothy Vaughn, and she's profiled in the movie Hidden Figures. She led a team of human computers at NASA who calculated complex problems. So one day, NASA bought an IBM digital computer in the early 60s, and Dorothy was told to let go of her entire team. So she was thinking, who is going to support this new IBM digital computer? You're going to need people for that. So Dorothy proactively taught herself and her team Fortran to support the IBM computer. She was transforming before transformation was even a thing. The landscape changed, so she stopped work that was not valuable, which was human computing. She changed skill sets by learning Fortran in order to invest in a more relevant career opportunity to support digital computers. She was able to pivot and transform during unprecedented change in her industry. And like her, we all need to sometimes refocus and make uncomfortable trade-offs to ensure we're in the game. So transformation is an endless cycle in every area. And it's necessary, not just for a company's growth, but for professional and personal growth too. And developing this idea to handle change and transform, given what life or work throws your way, is a critical skill to develop, and especially given the recent landscape. COVID is a universal challenge for everyone. It's changing our world, it's changing the way we live, it's changing the way we work. And on the professional front, and as a leader of worldwide service support, we're having to change how we focus and respond to the sudden shift in customer demands, which are being driven by 3 major forces. Digital consumption. Customers want now zero, low-touch services. They're demanding for it. So we're investing in more self-service, predictive analytics to foresee failures, and also providing more of a cloud-like experience. Financial constraints. Cash is king. Cash flow is increasingly more important to customers, and we are accelerating and already providing consumption and subscription-based offerings. And finally, cloud transition. Customers are accelerating the cloud journey more than ever before. And we're creating services and helping customers move their critical workloads to the cloud. And in the middle of all this, we can't forget to focus on the employee experience during this difficult time. We absolutely have to provide our employees with additional support to help them as they're integrating the work and personal life. And as you know, a stellar employee experience leads to a stellar customer experience. And I too am also trying to figure out how to manage this change at home, just like the rest of us. Starting to adapt to online grocery shopping, which is interesting. I'm learning to make quick and easy meals for lunch because I have to feed my 3 hungry teenagers daily, and boy, do they have an appetite. I fit in meditation, cat naps, as well as workouts to keep the energy level up and to manage stress. And I'm also taking advantage in spending more quality time with the family, like organizing paint nights, engaging more with the kids, eating dinner together as a family every evening, and taking on family projects. For example, my son and I built this gazebo for a family hangout, and it was just in time to celebrate a lovely Mother's Day last May. So to wrap up, I started out at a disadvantage, being born Indian in the US in the 60s. No one knew about India. My parents weren't fluent in English, and we also had to face some discrimination. I wanted marriage, I wanted kids, I wanted career, I wanted it all. But I was challenged with balancing all 3 and being a woman. Plus, culturally, I was expected to figure out taking care of the kids in the household on my own. So I focused on finding solutions by stop driving my sports car because my kids couldn't fit in. I'm just kidding. But seriously, by stop feeling sorry for myself for not getting the opportunity that I wanted and having a husband who was not initially supportive of my career. And instead, I took charge. I changed the way I work by taking risks, like moving my parents in and persuading my CEO to give me the chief transformation officer role. And it panned out for me. And I also figured out how to invest both in my kids and my career. It's not an or, it's an and, and it's very possible. And all of this resulted in a fulfilled family life and so far a successful career. So I hope you found my presentation useful. And I want you to remember, stop, change, and invest. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sheila. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yes, I can.
We're just trying to queue up the questions for you from the audience. So Ben, who is our session chair, is trying to unmute. Here we go. Hi, Ben. Can you please?
Hi. Hi. Yeah. So we're hoping to get some questions from the audience. In the meantime, we have a couple of questions that we thought of in advance. So the first one is, how has your career advice changed for new to career or seasoned career women in light of the pandemic?
So I don't think the career advice would really change. However, we actually need to be more self-aware of the situation. And we really need to look deeper into trade-offs, right? Because after all, we're trying to integrate work and life together, as I mentioned. So we really need to focus on more than ever in finding solutions and think out of the box. And I also really, really encourage all of you is to ask other women. You don't really need to reinvent this, right? There are some tricks of the trade that could be actually useful, as you actually try to balance both your personal and your work life.
Thanks for that answer, Sheila. So we have another question from the audience this time, which is, how did you seek mentors along the way?
I asked. So, I asked, and some of the feedback I do get, and I actually get this question often, is how do I ask? Well, send them an email. It's a risk. Take it. I mean, what is the worst thing that's going to happen? They may not respond. They may say no, or they just may, or who knows, they just may say yes, right? Or at least they may actually point you to the appropriate mentor for you, right? So I really encourage you that, just put yourself out there and just ask, and try to find a mentor that is similar to your situation. Like I've been blessed to have several female mentors in my life that are now hugely successful in Silicon Valley, and they have been through the same journey as I did. So I encourage you to do that.
So maybe as a follow-up there, you say, what's the worst that can happen? what's the worst that's happened to you? Have you ever had anything bad happen if you've asked someone to mentor you? That might give people some confidence.
Sure. In my 25 years experience, I've not had a bad experience at all. In fact, what I usually find, to be honest with you, are people are really helpful. And as I mentioned in my speech, you have to give people the benefit of the doubt. I mean, don't expect to say, um, hey, Sunita, do you mind if I mentor you? I think I can help you. You have to go there and you have to really ask for it. And, you'll be very pleasantly surprised how many people are willing to help.
Perfect. So, as a follow-up to your talk, can you recommend any resources that helped you with your personal growth? Things like books or courses, or do you have other recommendations? And that's from Priyanka Paliwal.
Right. So, to be honest with you, Priyanka, or into the broader audience, um, I've not read books specifically around how to help me, or how to actually grow my career. But what I did do is, and I mentioned this before, is that I did find a group of talented women and became very good friends with. And we actually coached each other along the ways, what works, what doesn't. And that seems to help. And I am also a Googler. I actually read lots of articles online, because things are changing so fast these days that, the books may sometime not be current. So I actually encourage all of you to actually read articles, especially on how a woman can thrive better in their career.
Thanks. So let's see. We're getting lots of good questions now, so it's really hard to choose. So here's one from Rosa Carbajal. She asks, did you find someone to help you transform your messaging when seeking out the CTO role? Was that exercise new for you?
Yeah, so yes, that exercise was new. And to be honest with you, when I was told that I wasn't qualified for the position, I'll be honest, I was feeling hurt a little bit. It was a little bit of a pity party. But what I did is that I did seek advice from my family. Actually, it was from my mother, who I mentioned was a psychologist. And she told me, Sheila, your approach is all wrong. You have to look at it another way of approaching it. You just can't assume he knows you're qualified for that role. Give him the benefit of the doubt that he doesn't know. So she encouraged me to put myself out there. And I practiced with her as far as what I was going to say, how I was going to articulate my message. And I was very crisp, and I rehearsed with her, and I did some role plays with her, and that actually helped a lot. So, if you don't have your mother near you or like around you, seek a friend. Seek another professional, right? To actually go through that, just to actually go through that exercise with you.
Thanks a lot for giving this great talk and for answering all these questions. If people want to follow up with you, are you on any social media platforms or anything like that? Would you like to engage with people in the audience in the future?
Yep, absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you very much.